Then came the Supreme Court that told you all, didn't tell me, but no, it told all of us, that corporations were individuals. That which said that the corporate vote, because of all the money that it has, is stronger than the voice of the people. Supreme Court solidified that, which we in the community felt that was wrong. And we still feel that it's wrong. We know that the corporation does not spew a family, does not have a family, does not raise a family. It's the individuals, that are an important part of this action. The individual human beings, the individual families. That language and what you said to the group here is on fire. That language and what you said to the group here is on fire. I mean, in my mind, coming and to affect the national political scene, to effectuate policy, is a strong and tough undertaking. To go around the country and talk to people, some that will listen and some that don't know that they should listen, takes a very courageous individual. Once upon a time, and I'm not going to be long, but once upon a time I was a salesman. So I know how it is to go and talk to somebody and then prospect and talk to somebody else, and prospect and talk to somebody else, and then finally get somebody to say, yeah, that's a great idea. So without further ado, I want to bring David Cobb up, because that's exactly who I'm talking about.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Paul. All right, y'all. Now, what I'm going to do is take 1 second to bring this down, and here's why. Because I'm very excited to talk to this group of people that are gathered here, but thanks to the work of Corrine, 1,000 more are going to know about this, because Corrine decided to stop hating the corporate media and to become the people's media. Thank you, Corrine, for that, right?
Yes.
And I think it's really important to recognize that what and how I would describe myself, straight up, I am a nonviolent revolutionary. I'm a nonviolent revolutionary. Oh, right, good. She's her head nod. That's good. See, now I'm nonviolent to be sure. This moment in history is such that we cannot tinker at the margins, right? We have a global ecological crisis that is happening right now, and the window to affect that is small, but we've got a social justice crisis too, right? So we really have to actually do big things in a hurry that are outside of the box of what most of us have thought about, most of us have been taught to think about. It's going to really require a big shift in thinking. Intuitively, as a trial lawyer and now scientist, our corporations are ruling over us. As surely as masters once ruled slaves, as surely as kings once ruled subjects, unelected and unaccountable corporate CEOs are ruling us because they are making the decisions. Corporate CEOs already decided how much poison will be in the air that we're all breathing right now. Corporate CEOs already decided how much toxic poison will be in the water that we're all drinking. Corporate CEOs are deciding whether you get health care or not. Corporate CEOs decide whether to take this country into war. But do not mistake a consumer choice with political power. Amen. Political power would be the opportunity to participate in a meaningful way to affect the society that we live in. And that is not happening. The move to amend figured out a way to start telling a story that cuts across issues, that even cuts across race and gender, that actually starts to find that for 99% of us, we're in the same boat, right? What language does the word democracy derive? Greek, very good. Let's break it down. Demos means the people. Kratia means rule. Very good. So broken down from the Attic Greek, means the people rule. Pop quiz. How many of you we the people are ruling in the United States? Don't be shy. Look around. I'm not joking. Look around. I do this presentation all across the country. Last year I did it 150 times. By the end of 2014, by the end of 2013, this year, I'll have done it 175 times. I ask that question everywhere I go. Almost nobody raises their hands. Friends, that is a problem. But saying it another way, I think it's a good thing. What? Oh, no. It's not a good thing that we the people don't rule. It's a good thing that people aren't raising their hands to that question anymore. See, I submit it's a good thing that we're being politically courageous enough and frankly politically mature enough to acknowledge a reality. We the people are not ruling in the United States, notwithstanding the creation myth that we were taught as children in public schools in this country. We the people don't rule. There is, in fact, not a democracy, but according to the Greek language, we would call it a plutocracy. The rule by a small, wealthy elite. And honestly, I feel like maybe we ought to make up another word. Let's just call it the kleptocracy. The rule of a thieving wealthy elite, because what they're stealing is our labor. They are stealing our collected, created wealth. And what really makes me upset, they're stealing our future and our children's future. True. See, this is what telling the truth feels like. It's rather liberating, because we're not taught that it's okay to actually tell this truth. That brings me to the next topic, which is sovereignty. Friends, if I just had the word sovereign on the board, who or what would you think of? Quick, the sovereign.
King.
I bet everybody here thought king, right? That's because the word sovereignty means the authority to rule. And 500 years ago, the king was the sovereign. The sovereign was the king. At least in the European tradition, those words were literally synonymous. And where did the king claim his authority to rule? God. You don't get more legitimate. Destroying the planet that we depend upon for life itself, and that is true. See, if these things are true and we know that they're true, then we need to start thinking and acting differently than we have been. I think we need to start thinking and acting like we're in a crisis. You know why I think we should start thinking and acting like we're in a crisis? Because we're in a crisis, y'all. Say it out loud. Say it to each other. It's good to verbalize that.
We're in a crisis.
We're in a crisis. Because you see, when you're in an actual crisis, it calls forth for a kind of action that just bad things can provoke us into action. And let's be honest, this crisis is an ecological crisis worldwide. The global climate crisis is real and it's hurtling towards us. There's a social justice crisis. People, mostly people of color and poor, and literally turning them into commodities that can be profited by being incarcerated, and that's how the system is designed. I wrote legal personhood because I want us to understand and come to a knowledge of legal personhood means the ability to assert rights under law. Now, the ability to assert rights, saying it that way, this is not just a legal technicality. Can you see, just thinking about it this way, the question of who is a legal person in this society has been a contest from Jump Street. Who gets to be a person and who can assert rights under the legal system? This is not a technicality. This is about the core question of how our society should be organized and how the legal system should be organized. And the last topic on the board is the word corporation. Because I think that is equally important. I'll ask, from what language does the word corporation derive?
Greek.
It's from Latin. Latin.
Okay.
Corpus means body, and the suffix tion means to have or create. So literally the word corporation means to have or create body. And by body, I mean literally physical body. First day being taught that a corporation is a legal fiction. Political maturity that we exhibited earlier, I'm challenging us to acknowledge and tell the truth. The 14th and 15th century of Europe wasn't the age of discovery at all. That's a lie that's been taught to us in American history textbooks. What the 14th and 15th century of Europe really represents is the age of rape and pillage and plunder and murder. There's one word that sums that up for me. You see, friends, that's what empire really means. Imperialism is beating people down. It's killing them. It's stealing their resources from them. And get this, follow it because it's important. The modern transnational corporation didn't just accidentally, happenstance, get created during this age of European imperialism. The modern transnational corporation was created as an intentional, deliberate instrument of empire. It was created to facilitate that destruction, that rape, that pillage. Anybody want to guess what the Africa Trading Company traded? Thank you so much. I heard a couple of different words tossed out there. I'm going to use myself as an example because I don't think that white people talk about race and racism often enough, and it's a hard thing to do, but I'm going to do it as an example to you and encourage you, if you're white also, to think about doing it, and it goes like this. In the 14th and 15th century of Europe, was Africa populated by a bunch of slaves? No. Now, I want to be honest, folks. When the question is asked of me, what did the Africa Trading Company trade? What I'm being honest is, if I don't give it any thought, the word that just pops into my head, slaves. Of course that's the word that pops. It's not because I'm a bad person. See, most of you don't know me. Paul remembers having dinner with me. I had dinner with George. I had dinner with a couple of y'all. Y'all got to know me a little bit, but most of you don't know. But I'm going to just tell you, I'm not a bad person. In fact, I'm a good person. Right? I really am. I'm a good person. So I'm not saying that the fact that the word slaves pops into my head makes me a bad person. It makes me a person educated in this society and part of this culture because the cultural story that's been told over and over again. See, I was taught how horrible the Africa slave trade was. I was taught that Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth were runaway slaves and that they helped other slaves run away. See, that word has been used for me to think about that all the time. And by the way, I'll never again, except for this topic, ever even use the word runaway slave or even escaped slave, because I think that actually is playing into the wrong way of thinking about it. Instead, I'll suggest to you, and if you should happen to have a history museum that travels around, let's actually call those people self-liberated human beings. You see how that one word change opens up a whole different narrative in our own heads? See, the point is, the word slave does pop into my head because that's the culture I live in. It doesn't make me a bad person, but here's the thing. Africa wasn't populated by slaves, was it? Africa was populated by people. Africa was populated by people. And now I'm going to go one step further and say something that's a little awkward perhaps, but you know what? It's true. So I'm going to say it with trepidation, but with as much courage as I can muster. Africa was populated by people who were basically just like me. Now I say that with some trepidation because I'm not foolish. I see what kind of skin I have. But I say it with conviction because if you ask any scientist, if you ask any biologist, she or he will tell you race does not exist. It is a construct. It is created by society, right? And here's the thing. Just as the corporation is a construct and it was created for a reason, whiteness is a construct and race is a construct created for a reason. And here's the thing. I believe I know why whiteness as a concept. See, but before the United States, mostly it was about place, and there were Scotch and Irish and Germans and Swedes and Italians and like those kinds of descriptors. But whiteness was uniquely created really here, and you know why I think whiteness was created? To bamboozle and confuse people who look like me. To make me say, it goes like this. If you look like me and have my skin color, but you're of the class that's being exploited and oppressed, you know the boss man's boot is on your neck, and it's terrible. I hate this system, but at least I'm white. Feel me? Right? I mean, this is the thing. Whiteness is actually created to try to make exploited white people actually feel like they've got more in common with the fellow with the boot on his neck just because the fellow with the boot on his neck happens to have the same pigment that we do. But in point of fact, I actually have much more in common with anybody else who happens to have the boss man's boot on his neck. See, it's really interesting. But here's the thing. We also have to acknowledge that white skin privilege does actually give us some privileges. It's a complex issue. And that's why I'm asking white people have got to get comfortable actually learning the history of whiteness and white supremacy and imperialism and understanding what the great Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. taught us in what is his best speech. His most famous speech is I Have a Dream. And that's a wonderful speech, and I'm glad he made it. But I want to point out something. For my money, his best speech was not delivered in Washington, D.C. His best speech was delivered in Harlem at the Riverside Church, where he described the triple evils of racism, imperialism, materialism. See, apparently it's okay to have a dream, but as soon as you begin to actually make the connections between capitalism, imperialism, and racism, apparently you get shot in this country. So, but here's the thing. I just want to point out that that truth is actually a liberatory experience. Because you know what? Many of you have heard the phrase, the truth will set you free. And I believe that's true. It really is true. But let me tell you this. There should come a warning label with that saying. The truth may set you free, but first it will piss you off. Joint stock company or a charter. Wow! See how important stories are? See how important it is that we ask who's telling us these stories? So in this story, the royal governor will be responsible to plant, to rule, and to govern this new area on behalf of me, the king, but also to benefit the other shareholders of the joint stock company. We've been confused intentionally and deliberately about what what it was like when Europeans first came here and why. That's not to take anything away from the Puritans and the Pilgrims, who were a slice of that story, but that's a smaller slice of that story. There's a bigger story about empire and a bigger story about exploitation and oppression being played out. And so, we know that there was a little thing called the American Revolution, right? And the American Revolution, in case you were wondering, I don't want to spoil anything, but happy to say the revolutionaries won. Yay! And by the way, a quick little thing, hard times don't make revolutions. If that were true, there'd be revolutions popping all over the world all the time. You know what makes revolutions? Revolutionaries. So if we would like to see a nonviolent revolution, we got to start thinking and acting like we're revolutionaries too. Nonviolent ones, but I'm going to invite you, if you would be comfortable enough saying, I'm a nonviolent revolutionary, just give it a shot. You don't have to, but if you want to, let's do it now together. I'm a nonviolent revolutionary. How'd that feel? Yeah, right? In fact, she says, you know, look here, can we get a camera back here? What's your name, sister? Jeannie. She was already comfortable, but she kind of leaned back. Is that true? She said, it felt good. I don't want to put you on the spot, sister, but I love that non-verbal
They
feedback.
already know that about
They already knew that about you, so it was very comfortable for her. All I'm getting at is that if we start to say things out loud, it begins to give us permission to start thinking and acting differently, and that's important. So in the American Revolution, the revolutionaries won, so a new charter gets written. This new charter is the supreme law of the land. What's that charter called? What's the supreme law of the land? The U.S. Constitution. How many of you have read that document? Okay, a lot of hands go up. Y'all read my paper. See if I get it right. When you read the Constitution in its entirety, friends, you're going to see two things. The first is the most important, and that is the first three words. We the people. We the people. Those are hallowed words in this country, and they should be. See, we the people come together to create the second actor, which is government itself. Saying it this way, we the people create government. Government is dependent upon us. I like how some of my friends say, government, we the people should never be afraid of the government. Actually, they say government should be afraid of the people. How many of y'all believe the government is afraid of we the people? I do. Thank you for raising your hand, sir. Thank you, Shimako, because this question is what I like to call a slow burn question. Because I'll tell you something, if they weren't afraid of we the people, why is Chelsea Manning about to do 35 years for exposing the truth to the American people? If the government isn't afraid of we the people, why is Edward Snowden being hunted down for exposing the truth to the American people about what's being done to us and allegedly in our names? If the government were not afraid of we the people, why would they have systematically shot down hundreds of Occupy encampments across the country where ordinary Americans were just coming together to have conversation with each other? Really, don't be scared. Because I know that right now you're so addicted to that crack pipe of power that you can't see anything other than just the mental illness associated with accumulating ever more power. But you know what, this nonviolent revolution that I'm part of? You may not like it, but your grandchildren are going to be grateful that we did an intervention on your ass. They're going to be grateful that we actually intervened to stop you from raping and pillaging the planet, all to accumulate more zeros on a bank account that doesn't actually mean anything. They're really kind of mentally ill because they're just acquiring more and more stuff, destroying the planet that they and their own children depend upon for life itself. Honestly, if we had a just and compassionate healthcare system, we'd get them help. Yeah. Instead, we put them in charge, and that's our fault. Right? We've got to actually think in a nonviolent revolutionary way about how to get them the help that they so obviously need. I want to get back to this, though, because in the United States Constitution, we the people create government, and we the people are free, and we are sovereign. What does the word sovereign mean again? King. The authority to rule. See, the king isn't sovereign anymore. We kicked his butt out. But government isn't sovereign either. Government is subordinate and accountable. Government is subordinate to whom? The people. Government is accountable to whom? The people. That's got a ring to it, doesn't it? I like how this is going. Let's continue. We the people are free and sovereign because we the people have rights. Government does not have rights. Government only has duties. And as a lawyer, I want to stop for a moment and point out the difference between rights and duties is profound. Right, brother? If I have the right to do something, it means I can do it. And I don't need your permission. I don't need the City Council of Grand Rapids' permission. I don't need the state legislature of Michigan's permission. Thank goodness with your crazy legislation these days. But the point is, I don't need anybody's permission, not individually or the government permission. If I have the right to do something, it means I can do it. And it doesn't matter whether it's popular or not. It doesn't matter whether it's politically acceptable or not. Having a right is profound. And government never has rights over the people. Government only has duties to the people. And where do those duties come from? Well, remember, all power resides with the people. And the entire history of the United States has been a series of struggles by actual human beings to be defined as persons with rights under this Constitution. People are free and sovereign because we hold all the political power. But we wisely delegate a certain amount of our power to government. Government, which we will always hold, and we the people will charge government with certain duties, that no public duties by writing laws at the public policy at the local, state, or federal level. But the one thing that no public policy can ever legitimately do is to violate the private rights of the free and sovereign people who live there. Ta-da! Yeah. Right? This is the thing. This is a powerful narrative. So I'm not trying to fuss with the narrative. I'm trying to ask us, where does legal personhood belong and where does the corporation go? Before I put the corporation on my chart, though, I have to ask, somebody tell me, what does it take to form a corporation in Michigan today?
Charter.
How much? I'm going to ask my lawyer friend. What's the filing fee? About, approximately. $150. $150.
File some papers in Lansing.
File some papers in your state capital, and as long as the paperwork is filled out properly, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and your relatively minor filing fee, the check clears, what will the Secretary of State do? Rubber stamp it and issue you what?
A license.
A charter. A corporate charter. And that corporation is now birthed. And what can you do with a corporate charter in Michigan today? Anything legally permissible. That's what the code says. Apparently, if you have enough wealth and power, you can do all sorts of illegal things and get away with it. But the point is, under the legal system, we're not even taught to think about it, right? Forever. As long as your corporate charter lasts in Michigan.
Forever.
Forever. As long as your filing fees are paid. Now, friends, I'm going to take you back to 1789. First, your application tell you what it once took to form a corporation in every state of the newly created United States, and this was true for the next 75 to 100 years. First, your application did not go to a trivial clerk. Your application went to the State House of Representatives, where they debated it and voted on it, and you had to get a majority vote. If the State House of Representatives gave you a majority vote, because now it goes to the State Senate, where they debate it, vote on it, and you've got to get another majority vote. And that's still not enough, because if you got a majority vote in the State House and the State Senate, it goes to the governor, who considers it and has to be willing to sign it. Does that sound anything like a corporate charter today? Of course not. What did I just describe? Legislation, a law. The point I'm making is the chartering process for 100 years in this country was the political equivalent of making a law, because they understood that limited liability was a privilege, not a right, and it was properly politically controlled. But get this, even if you were granted the privilege of limited liability, all you could do with your corporation was the very narrow thing that you had identified that you would do. If you ever did any other type of business other than that narrowly controlled business, you know what happened to your corporate charter? Revoked. Corporate charter beyond the authority, or ultra vires, if you remember that phrase in Latin. Beyond the authority of why it had been allowed to exist. And get this, how long a corporate charter would last? Typically 5 years or 10 years. Every corporate charter was limited in time. And get this, even if you were acting in the limited time period, even if you're doing the specific narrow thing that you had been granted your corporate charter to do, if you ever did anything that violated the public interest or the public trust, do you know what happened to your corporate charter? Revoked. Corporate charters were once routinely revoked for merely acting against the public interest. So that brings me to this pop quiz. Somebody name a single one of the Fortune 500 corporations that could even operate today with those political restrictions that once existed in this country. I'll wait. None, right? This is the point. For those people who claim that they're so concerned about the founders' original intent, well, for 100 years, the founders set up a circumstance so that the limited liability corporation was very tightly controlled. Now, I'm not saying that 1789 was the land of milk and honey. We've already covered that. Slavery existed. The patriarchy against women was real. Working class white men were being systematically exploited as well. But what I'm saying is that the tool known as the corporation was appropriately controlled through the political process.